Hello everyone and welcome back to Sketching with Shaw. Today we're tackling perspective. Let's get into it. One-point perspective. First thing we're going to tackle is one-point perspective. Throw you a horizon line up there in the middle. Then what you're going to do is find somewhere on this line you're going to put your vanishing point. For the purpose of this exercise, I'm just going to plop mine down right here in the middle. And one-point perspective is pretty easy. 2 and 3 point start getting a little intermediate, but 4 and 5 point is where it gets super crazy. I'm not going to be covering 4 and 5 point in this video, but I will be covering 1, 2, and 3 point perspective. But starting out here with 1 point perspective, this line right here, the viewer line, this is where your eyesight's going to be. So that's eye level to you, the viewer. And anything above it, you're going to be looking up at the object. Anything below this line, you're going to be looking down at the object. I'll show you what I mean. So if we draw an object over here, draw a little box. Now 1 point perspective is all the sides that are closest to you, like this one here, is going to be flat, facing straight towards you. Because if I started to turn it, well then our lines would be going not only to this vanishing point, but there would also be another vanishing point, which is 2 point perspective. And I'll go over that later on in the video. But for this first part here, you want to line up these 3 corners to your vanishing point here. And now you can just figure out where you want, in these 3 lines, where you want to cut the side and top of your box out at. And just like that, we've drawn a box in 1 point perspective. All the planes that's closest to you, like this one right here, is going to have to be flat. Because like I said, you start to turn it, and then some of these lines would be going to another vanishing point. But since we drew it below our vanishing point, we can see the top of our box, the side of our box, and the front face of our box here. Alright, well let's say we want to draw a box up here floating in the air. So we just go up here. Let's draw this one directly above our vanishing point this time. Because if I just drew it up here in the air, it would just be the opposite of what's down here. But if I draw it in the middle here, draw a little square quickly. It won't be an exact square, but close enough nonetheless. Y'all might hear the school bus outside letting off kids. I live in an apartment complex, so y'all might hear the neighbors and stuff every now and then. I apologize for that. But now, since we got our box directly above our vanishing point, we ain't going to be able to see the sides like we did with this one. But since it's above us, we will see the bottom. Like how we see the top right here, we're going to see the bottom of this box. So like we did before, line up our 2 bottom corners here to the vanishing point, that is. Now, wherever you put your line at, say I want my line down here, well that's going to give us a super long box. But if I put my line, say up here, well now our box is a lot smaller. That's just up to preference. It just depends on what you're drawing and what you want in your space here. But for this, I'll just make my box tiny there. And there we go. Now we got us a box drawn directly above our vanishing point. And like I said, all the sides that face towards you are just going to have to be flat. Now let's say we draw one directly on our viewer line here. Or our
I fucked that. Bro, damn.
Now let's say we draw one directly on our horizon line here. Now since it's directly on our line, we ain't going to see the top nor the bottom of this box. We're only going to see the side. Now if our vanishing point was over here, we would see this side of the box. But since it's over here, we're going to see this side. Like I said before, depending on where you put the line for the side of your box, it's either going to make it short, super skinny like that, or super long. This side right here has to be flat. Now that you know how to draw a 1 point perspective, I'm going to show a few examples of how it can be used. Alright, here we have an example. If I put our horizon line up high, in case we're like, say these buildings are in a city or whatnot, and we're kind of up above the buildings. We're looking down, the road would be somewhere down here. But this is if you're hovering above your buildings. Well, the same could be said if we flipped it upside down. Now this is the ground. So we're sitting at ground level. Since we flipped it, now instead of this being a road, we can erase that. We can take all of our lines, bring them down to the ground, just like that. Which I kind of made a tangent right here. You want to avoid doing that. It's a beginner mistake a lot of people make. But if we take all of our lines, bring them down like so, it quickly starts to look like we're just laying down on the ground looking up towards buildings. Alright, here's a few more examples of 1-point perspective. Here we have a few buildings with a little car, some lampposts and whatnot, a little stick figure of Spider-Man swinging through. Here's an example of 1-point perspective of inside of a room. We got your little desk over here with a computer, closet or whatnot, little shelf, a window, some lights, cool poster. Here's another outside scene, but as you can see, all the buildings are kind of flat and having a face directly towards you, like I said in the tutorial. Moving on from 1-point perspective, because every building ain't going to be flat facing directly towards you. It's just not going to happen. It's not realistic. Let's hop into 2-point perspective. Alright, just like 1-point perspective, we're going to have a horizon line. But unlike 1-point perspective, this time we're going to put 2 points on our horizon line. So now we got 2 vanishing points. Now this time, instead of drawing a whole box, we just need to find one corner of the box. So let's say we want our box to be over here this time. Now we need to find the bottom and the top connected over here to this side. Same for the top, and then same for this side. Line up the top and bottom, and then just do it again. And I may sound a little nasally. I'm just getting over being sick, so I apologize for that. But now that we got our 4 lines drawn in, now we can see both sides kind of taper off. Now we just figure out where we want to put our sides of our box. And just like that, we've drawn a box in 2-point perspective. Like I said, now we don't just have one flat side facing directly towards us. Now we have one side kind of facing this direction and one side off facing that direction, because now we have 2 vanishing points. Let's say now that we drew one on our horizon line, let's draw one up here and one down here. So if we're looking up at a box, roughly about, let's just say it's up here, shall we? Line this up like we did our first box. Now that we have our 4 lines drawn in, now we see this side, but now we see the bottom of our box. So let's figure out, if we make our angle steep, it's going to give us a skinny box. Make our angle a little bit wider, it's going to give us a much longer box, a much wider box. How many times am I going to say box in this video? A million. Then we just draw straight up and down for this side. And now we have us a box drawn in 2-point perspective again. Oh well, I guess it would help if I finished off the bottom of our box, huh? There we go. Give it the bottom of the box, then straight up and down for that. Now we got a box on our horizon, looking up. Now let's draw one down here somewhere in the middle, shall we? Give us a line to go off of. Line our corners up. And now we're going to see the top of our box since it's below our horizon. Once again, figure out how wide we want our box to be. Same with this. And then straight up and down lines to find the sides of your box. And I'll erase all the extra lines so you can kind of see easier what that would look like. Okay, so I got my lines erased. Now you can see our box is a little bit easier there for 2-point perspective. Now that you know how to draw a 2-point perspective, I'm going to show you an example of what you can do with it. So right here I have a page from the comic book that me and my cousin's working on. Here's our shop that she's going to be working in. And here's our person down here. I even got them holding a little box of stuff they're getting out of their truck over here. But as we see, all of our lines converge to our 2 points there and there. I kind of had to erase the horizon line, but it's just straight through there. Y'all can barely see it. All the lines converge to our 2 points here. Like all these boxes in the back of the truck all go to there and there. That's how I even found out where my person would be standing right here. even all these steps, every single one of them lines straight back up to this vanishing point. That's another example of what you can do with 2-point perspective. And with that, that leads us into 3-point perspective. Okay, so just like 1 and 2-point perspective, we're going to want to find our horizon line. Now for this, I'm going to make this one a little bit higher up on my page. And just like the name would suggest, we're going to have 3 points. One there, one there. And then our third one's going to be down here somewhere. So now we got 1, 2, and 3 points. Now to find our cube, let's say we put one right here. We're going to line up our points like kind of like we did in 2-point perspective. Now see, that's just like we did in 2-point perspective, but here's where it gets different. When we want to find the sides of our box, this time our lines are going to be going down to our third point. So now we have these two lines converging here, but now it also converges down to our bottom point. If these two lines were to continue, you would see that they do in fact come all the way down to our vanishing point. But now that we've found the two sides of our box, let's find the top of our box since it's below our horizon. Just line up your edges like that to your vanishing point. Line up this corner to that one. And then now you have your top and your sides. And if we want, we can toss in another building. Let's say we want to put a building next to this building. Well, we just go in, drop us another line. Let's say this is a street right here, dividing these two buildings. So we just follow up this line. Now we got our building going across the street. Let's make it about that wide of a building, shall we? So now we have this side kind of facing us a little bit, kind of like this one. And let's make this building a little bit shorter than this building, shall we? So we'll go in, put a line about right there. So now we have this side of the building just like this one. I'm gonna get rid of some of these lines. It's getting a little too hard to see what we're doing here. All right, now that we have our extra lines out the way, now we can see our first building a lot more clear, and the first side of our second building a lot clearer. Now let's find the top of our second building, shall we? Line up our corners. Bada boom. This corner right off the page, so we ain't gotta worry about that corner too much. Let's find out how wide our building's gonna be, and bada boom, just like that, we've got two buildings in perspective. Let's put another building over here, shall we? Drop us in a line, just like so. After we got our first line in, we gotta figure out how tall we want the building to be. About right there. We gotta see how wide we want our building to be. And then if it's across the street, like this is another street, like this is a four-way intersection down here, then it'd be right across the street from that building. So that would be the bottom of our building there. So now like that building, we had the face closest to us. Now let's find the top of our third building. And just like that, erase some of our extra lines. And now we've got three buildings drawn in 3-point perspective. And now that you know how to draw 3-point perspective, like the other two, I'm going to show you a few examples of how you can use it. Here's some other buildings that I had drew up already, but you can see this would be like a four-way intersection down here with buildings and whatnot. If this was a city, there'd be a lot more boxes, and they would get smaller as they go off in the distance, because you know, it's real life. As things get farther away, they shrink. As they get closer, they get bigger. But we can see here, as our horizon line is up above the buildings, that means we're kind of floating up in the air here. So we're kind of looking down on all these buildings. But just like we did with 1-point perspective, if we flip it, then this would be our ground level. And if we extend all of our lines down to our ground level here, you quickly start to see that the buildings kind of makes it look like you're a mouse or an ant or something down on the street level looking up at buildings. So now if we erased all these lines, and now that I've erased some of the lines, it's a lot easier to tell. You kind of look like an ant looking up at some buildings instead of being a bird looking out over the building. And with that being said, that brings us to the end of the video. Now you know how to draw 1, 2, and 3 point perspective. If you found this video helpful, please consider hitting like and subscribe and even leaving a comment. But until next time, guys, peace.